What a night of Champions League football, dramas everywhere, 18 games going down simultaneously. I really had a great fun. In fact, it's been a long time since I had such fun at a dramatic night of the UEFA Champions League. I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed myself. And for whoever that invented this format of the Champions League, I think the person deserves an accolade because what? It was a wonderful night. But anyway, real quick, let's really do a recap of everything that happened over the course of the night. Take a look at the score lines, take a look at the table standings, and of course, teams that made it into the top 8, teams that made it into the playoff positions, and of course, those that were eliminated. We'll also take a look at the knockout playoffs, the pairings, teams' possibility of meeting each other, and also we'll extend it to the round of 16 and look at the possible pairings of the round of 16 of this season's UEFA Champions League. So real quick, let's get into the score lines of last night. And looking at the score lines of last night, we'll start with this one. Ajax against Olympiacos. He ended 2-1 in favor of Olympiacos. And of course, if you saw my video that I posted yesterday on this channel, I said it that both Ajax and Olympiacos needed a win to make it into the playoffs because a draw wouldn't have done them any good. And Olympiacos were able to get the result 2-1 win against Ajax, and that got them into the playoff positions of the UEFA Champions League. Arsenal did the needful by beating Kairat by 3-2. It was never in doubt, but I was just surprised that Kairat were able to score 2 goals at the Emirates. But Arteta used this game to do some test runs and, of course, to ease in some players who were coming back from injury. Kai Havertz was phenomenal on the night. Athletic Club and Sporting CP. I also talked about this game that for Athletic Club is a must-win for them if they want to make it into the playoffs or the Champions League. And for Sporting, even a loss wouldn't have done any bad to them because they will still make the playoffs. But they outdid themselves by getting all the 3 points and getting into the top 8 of the UEFA Champions League. Massive one from the team from Portugal. Now, Atletico Madrid. I am embarrassed on you people's behalf, but that is not me trying to downplay what Bodo Glimt have done in the last 2 matches against Manchester City and against Atletico Madrid. And I think they were well rewarded by getting themselves into the playoff positions of the UEFA Champions League. For Atletico Madrid, they are still very much available in the Champions League. Now, Dortmund against Inter Milan. Both teams actually wanted to give themselves a bit of hope to get into the top 8, but unfortunately, even with the win, Inter Milan could not get into the top 8 of the UEFA Champions League because of results elsewhere. And the game between Barcelona and FC Copenhagen, I was well assured that Barcelona were going to win this game, but they didn't start so well. They lost the first half. They were trailing by a goal to nothing. But second half, they got into gear and they were able to defeat Copenhagen by 4-1. And based on other results that happened elsewhere, it favored Barcelona as they made it into the top 8 of the UEFA Champions League standing. Benfica and Real Madrid, I think this was the most dramatic game of the night with 2 red cards and, of course, a goalkeeper scoring the decisive goal that Benfica needed to make it into the playoffs. Guess what? Benfica finished 24th, the last place for the playoff positions of the UEFA Champions League. What a night it was for Real Madrid, embarrassing night because I said it in the video I made the preview for the Champions League that Real Madrid needed just a point to make it into the top 8, but unfortunately, even the points they couldn't get. Shout out to Jose Mourinho and his side, Benfica. It was a fantastic night for them at Stadio de Luis. All right, moving on. Club Brugge made sure that they dragged Marseille out of the Champions League because that 3-0 loss of Marseille to Club Brugge was what aided Benfica to get into the playoff position in the expense of Marseille. Frankfurt, who already eliminated from the Champions League, lost 0-2 to Tottenham Hotspur. Of course, Tottenham Hotspur were able to consolidate their place in the last 8 of the UEFA Champions League and the top 8, I beg your pardon. Leverkusen defeated Villarreal, who were already eliminated, and also they made it to the playoffs as well. Liverpool turned the game against Karabakh to be a game of exhibition. It was like a friendly game. Virgil van Dijk getting 3 assists in that game. Mohamed Salah scoring a fantastic free kick as well in that game, assisted by Szoboszlai. And I think Liverpool were fantastic on the night. They finished in the top 8 anyway. It was because I expected them to actually beat Qarabağ. Manchester City made light work of Galatasaray. Haaland was back in the goals. Fantastic chip from the Norwegian. And for Galatasaray, it was not really a bad night for them because they still made it into the playoffs of the UEFA Champions League. Monaco and Juventus, nothing separated these sides, and that meant that both of them remained in the playoff positions of the UEFA Champions League. Napoli and Chelsea, I said it before this game that it was not like a make or mal one for Chelsea because even a loss at Naples would have still given Chelsea the opportunity to finish in the playoff positions. But for Napoli, it was a must-win for them if they wanted to remain in the UEFA Champions League. Chelsea took the lead in that game courtesy of a penalty from Enzo Fernandez. And for Napoli, they were able to get themselves back into that game and even went in front before the halftime, courtesy of goals from I'm trying to remember the name of the first player that scored, but I know that Holland was also on the score sheet in the night. But that 2-1 lasted only in the first half. Chelsea came into the second half, blazing. And of course, they won by 3-2, which meant that Chelsea finished in the top 8 and avoided, the two-legged games of the playoff. Pafos and Slava Prague. Unfortunately for Pafos, they needed to score more goals if they wanted to make the playoff. But unfortunately, it didn't work that way. The 4-1 win over Slava Prague, who were already eliminated, was not enough. Paris Saint-Germain and Newcastle United, as I also said, both teams needed a win. A draw wouldn't have done them any good because a draw will automatically take both of them out of the top 8, and it did. PSG took the lead in that game, and Ousmane Dembele missed a penalty, but Newcastle were able to get back on level terms. They had the opportunity to win that game, but unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. So both teams will have to navigate, the path of the playoff to make it into the round 16 of the Champions League. And of course, Bayern Munich were able to do the needful, defeating PSV away from home by 2-1. Musiala was back on the goals hurricane also with the winner in this particular game. PSV needed a win to guarantee them playing in the playoffs of the Champions League, but unfortunately, it didn't work that way. And the game between Union Saint-Gilloise and Atalanta ended 1-0 in favor of the Belgian side, but it was not enough for Union Saint-Gilloise to make it into the playoffs of the Champions League. Atalanta, it did them no harm as they still remain in the Champions League. Now, let's take a look at the table standings and see how the night panned out. Shout out to Arsenal, who made it 8 wins out of 8 in this season's UEFA Champions League, although that is not a guarantee that they will go on to win the Champions League. I'm not trying to diss them, but it's a normal thing. But fantastic one from Arsenal in the league phase. 8 wins out of 8, the best team in the Champions League so far. After them, you can now count on Bayern Munich. So based on the top 8 of the Champions League, as you can see on your screen, Arsenal finished first, Bayern Munich finished second. And what this implies is that Arsenal cannot meet Bayern Munich at any stage of this competition unless in the final. That is what this means. But they can meet any other team in the competition. But Bayern Munich and Arsenal can never face off until the final. All right. So moving on, Liverpool finished third. Fantastic one for Anslot. Of course, Tottenham Hotspur, who are doing badly in the Premier League, they are redeeming themselves in the Champions League, finishing fourth right there. Barcelona on 5th, Chelsea on 6th, Sporting CP on 7th, and of course, Manchester City on 8th. If you notice something on this top 8, 5 English teams finished in the top 8. We had 6 teams from England participating in this season's UEFA Champions League, and 5 of them finished in the top 8. 1 team from Germany, that is Bayern Munich, and of course, 1 team from Spain, Barcelona, and 1 team from Portugal, Sporting CP. Going down to the playoff positions, we have Real Madrid, Inter Milan, Paris Saint-Germain, Newcastle United, Juventus, Atletico Madrid, Atalanta, Leverkusen, Borussia Dortmund, Olympiacos, Club Brugge, Galatasaray, Monaco, Karabakh, Bodo Glimt, and then Benfica, the last team right there to make it, into the playoffs. I'm talking about the eliminated teams. Marseille, they were eliminated alongside Pafos of Cyprus, Union Saint-Gilloise, PSV, Athletic Club, Napoli. The course of, cup games for Anthony Conte continues. Copenhagen, Ajax, Frankfurt, Slava Prague, Villarreal, and then Kairat Almaty. All of these teams were eliminated from the Champions League. Were you surprised to see any name on these teams that were eliminated? Is there any team rather that you felt, okay, should have made it into the playoff positions of the UEFA Champions League this season? Let me know in the comment section. Now, let's really move on to the knockout phase of the UEFA Champions League. For the knockout playoffs, it's going to be happening later in the course of February. And of course, the draws will be taking place later tomorrow, Friday, the 30th of January, 2026. And in case you don't know how this works, I explained it in my last video. The teams that finish from 1st to 8th automatically qualifies to the round 16 of the Champions League. The team that finish 9th to 24th, we have to go through playoffs, and the 8 teams that emerge victorious from these pairings will join the other 8 teams in the round of 16. And based on the pairings, how it is done is that the teams that finish higher up will face the teams that finish at the bottom side of the standings. Talking about the team that finish from 9th to 24th. So let's take a look at the pairings right there. As you can see on the pairings, we have seeded and unseeded teams. For the seeded teams, they'll be playing their first games away from home, and the return leg will be at home. While for the unseeded teams, the first game will be at home and the return leg will be away from home. So based on the pairings of the knockout playoff draw that will be happening tomorrow, Real Madrid who finish 9th or Inter Milan that finish 10th will face either Bodo Glimt or Benfica that finish 23rd and 24th on the table. And we are seeing a possibility of Benfica meeting Real Madrid again in the knockout playoffs. And of course, the opportunity of Jose Mourinho returning to his former sides, Real Madrid and Inter Milan. He was asked which of these teams will he want to face, and he said any of them will do him good. He's not scared of facing any of them. But let's see how that one pans out. And then we have Paris Saint-Germain or Newcastle United that finished 11 and 12. They'll be facing either of Monaco or Karabakh in the knockout playoffs. And then Juventus or Atletico Madrid that finished 13 and 14 will face either of Club Brugge or Galatasaray. And then Atalanta or Leverkusen will face either of Borussia Dortmund or Olympiacos. And this draw will be happening on the 30th of January 2026. For the first leg of the knockout playoffs, it's going to be happening on the 16th and 17th. Actually, it's going to be on the 17th and 18th of February 2026. And then for the second leg, it's going to be happening on the 24th and 25th of February 2026. Now, let's take a look at the pairings of the round of 16, the possibility of teams meeting themselves, because the pairings, the parts are already there. Now, for the round of 16, anybody that wins, the team that win in this pairing, Monaco Karabakh versus PSG Newcastle United, we are going to be having two games right there. So the teams that emerge from this will face either of Chelsea or Barcelona in the round of 16 of this season's UEFA Champions League. And we have a possibility of seeing two English teams face off in the round of 16. That's Newcastle and Chelsea, if Newcastle United makes it to the round of 16. And then Club Brugge versus Galatasaray, and then Juventus up against Atletico Madrid. The two teams that makes it from here, this bracket, will face either of Liverpool or Tottenham Hotspur in the round of 16. And then Bodo Glimt or Benfica versus Real Madrid or Inter Milan. Anybody that wins right here will face either of Sporting or Manchester City in the round of 16. And there's a possibility of having a rematch between Real Madrid and Manchester City again this season. That is, if they make it. And then we have Borussia Dortmund or Olympiacos facing Atalanta or Bayer Leverkusen. Anyone that wins right here in this bracket, the two teams that makes it out of this bracket will face either of Arsenal or Bayern Munich in the round of 16. As I said earlier on, Arsenal or Bayern Munich cannot meet each other until the finals of this season's UEFA Champions League. And this is how things stands at the moment. Let me quickly run you through with the date of this particular appearance. As I said earlier on, the draws will be happening on the 30th of January 2026 on Friday, tomorrow, for the knockout playoffs. And then for the first legs, it's going to be on the 17th and 18th of February. And the second legs will be on the 24th and 25th of February 2026. How was the Champions League night for you, and what pairings are you looking forward to? I want you to share how you feel about this season's UEFA Champions League so far in the comment section. And do not forget to like, share, drop your comment, and subscribe to my channel.